From the Straits of Gaza to the Strait of Hormuz, the escalating conflict threatens global markets.
I am really excited. I'm looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years. Sounds strange? Having lived for almost 70 years and having followed the current war of US Israel on Iran, my prediction is that this world is entering an exciting new era, and I am hopeful. Does that sound odd? Let me explain. Since World War II, the USA has been the dominant world force. It is the world's largest economy. It has arguably the world's technically best military. It has about 750 military bases throughout the world, spread in over 80 countries. The Monroe Doctrine of 1823 has essentially claimed the Western Hemisphere for the USA and has stated clearly that the USA has the right to intervene in any country's affair if it feels its economic or military interests are threatened. Until this current war, the majority of the Western world has accepted this state of affairs, have been reluctant to go against the USA in any significant way, in any sphere of influence. So, what has changed? Well, what has changed is simply that the basic premises of the Monroe Doctrine has been called into question and objectively challenged. The war against Iran has shown that the presumed military might is an illusion, that in today's world with drones, satellites, and global internet podcasts, military might alone is not enough. The idea that you can decapitate a government and the country will descend into chaos has been proven inaccurate in every situation. Venezuela's Maduro was kidnapped, but the country remains unchanged. The Ayatollah was assassinated, but his son has stepped into his place without interruption. The idea that superior, more high tech military hardware will be victorious has also been challenged. The use of cheap, easily replaceable drones and missiles against the exorbitantly expensive equipment has led to what is now termed asymmetric warfare. By changing this war from one of technology to one of economic sustainability has been a game changer. A single early detection radar system, what's called a THAAD, costs between 500 million and 1 billion US dollars, while a drone capable of destroying it costs between 20 and 50,000 US dollars. So, what has become clear in this war is that however sophisticated your weapon system, however fast your jet fighters, they ultimately rely on stationary and vulnerable logistic parts, radar systems, ammunition depots, refueling aircrafts, all of which can be destroyed fairly easily and cheaply. One does not need to shoot down a stealth bomber if it needs to refuel in mid-air regularly. It is more efficient to destroy the refueling tanker. One has only to target a few of the very expensive, difficult to replace radars to crash the entire defensive system of a country. What this war has also brought to light is that war has real economic costs, not only for the opposing countries, but for the entire world. And this means that relationships become strained during wartime. Countries that were not consulted or did not see the need to enter the fight begin to lose patience with their allies who are who are seen to have inflicted hardship upon their population. Alliances are broken, or if not broken, at least redefined, and new relationships are sought and developed. The Gulf states that invited the US bases on their soil in exchange for the perceived protection it offered are now questioning the wisdom of this agreement, to the extent that Saudi Arabia, one of the USA's strongest allies in the region, is now denying the USA the use of its bases. President Trump's attempt to shore up support for Israel by attempting to pressure the Gulf states to sign up to the Abraham Accord is only making him seem desperate in their eyes and weakening support for the USA and Israel in the region and worldwide. It seems desperate to attempt to link a treaty between Israel and non combatant states to a peace deal between the USA and Iran. What has one to do with the other? What this war has shown is that, to quote a West Indian proverb, it is not how many dogs are in the fight, but how much fight is in the dog. Another important factor in this war is the actual personalities themselves. On the one hand, we have Donald Trump, who comes across as an arrogant and ignorant megalomaniacal bully, imposing ridiculous tariffs on anyone he perceives as having some small trade advantage, regardless of whether they were allies or not. He is quick to threaten any and everyone with sanctions and even military actions as a prelude to and a main negotiation tactic. He sends unqualified and inexperienced friends and family to serious negotiations that affect the world. What is worse is that he clearly does not understand that neither of these behaviors are useful in building or keeping meaningful and stable relationships. He does not seem to realize that such behavior comes across as immature, bellicose, and simply incompetent as a leader. Then there is Benjamin Netanyahu and his ministers, who display their sadistic lack of humanity at every turn, from the genocide of Gaza over the past 2 years to the indiscriminate bombing of civilian structures, hospitals, and schools, the targeting of medical and aid personnel, and the torture and abuse of prisoners and even civil objectors, such as on the flotilla, who were recently arrested, tortured, and abused publicly. There is the often repeated mantra of Netanyahu that he will do all that he can to prevent there ever being a state of Palestine, that he will not be satisfied until Iran is completely destroyed, and other clearly unachievable and paranoid histrionics. On the other hand, we see the calm-handed and calm-headedness of the Iranian government, who, despite absorbing tremendous physical loss, including the assassination of virtually every one of its top tier of leadership, has continued smoothly and unabatedly across the strategic and tactical plans, producing humorous and pointed music videos, sending experienced and well-educated representatives to what should be the most serious negotiations in modern history. Unlike Trump, it has stuck to its objectives, refused to alter its red lines, and shown it is willing to go the distance militarily, economically, and on the international stage. Already alliances are shifting. Canada has in a large part disengaged from the USA and is forming ties to Europe, BRICS, and Australia. Europe, led largely by Spain and to a lesser extent France and Italy, has also realized that it too needs to become less dependent on the USA for security and commerce, and are taking steps towards ensuring they have other options. Russia and China have long-standing relationships with Iran, and no amount of recent attempts by Trump to get them on his side is likely to work. China is already accelerating the shift from trade in US dollars to trade in Chinese yuan, an alternative it began to set up as part of its ambitious Road and Belt Initiative of connecting Europe, Asia, and Africa. So where does that leave the USA? Well, literally, it leaves it essentially isolated, with its only ally being the much smaller economy of Israel and whatever smaller nations it can manage to invade or influence in South America and the West Indies, such as Venezuela, Colombia, and Cuba. But the USA is heavily in debt, and that is quite key. It is in debt to the tune of 39 trillion US dollars, and the only thing saving it from a very deep depression is that the world still trades in US dollars. Because of this, the US dollar is in high demand, and countries are willing to underwrite the debt. But what happens if and when the world starts trading in another currency, such as the yuan, as I am predicting? Well, then the US has to repay its debt. It has to sell its resources. It becomes less competitive as it is no longer a preferred trading partner. It enters a deep, deep depression. What happens to Israel? Well, as a country, it fades into obscurity. Of course, the Jewish billionaires remain. They shift their investments to other countries and try to make Zionists of them the way they did in the USA. But the world has woken up. It will no longer fall for the same chosen people or right to exist and defend itself propaganda. The world becomes multipolar instead of the unipolar one we have been in for the past 100 years, with one country, the USA, dictating all of its terms. Now there are new blocks of influence: Europe, with Canada and Australia, and parts of the Indo-Pacific, and BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, Saudi Arabia, South Africa. The countries of Africa and South America, free from the burdensome terms of the IMF and the World Bank, will begin to develop too, and form alliances with these two groups. So as horrible a person as Trump and Netanyahu are, I suspect they are digging their own graves and ushering in a new world order that takes the ground from right under their feet. What a wonderful world it would be.